The slaves' arrival at the Queen's court, the slave ship broke through the crimson sky of Thalzer, its hull shaking as it descended into the royal landing zone of the Zarnath Empire's capital, Arquara, inside the brutal palace walls of the insatiable Queen. Inside a dark holding cell, the human named Jace knelt in chains. His wrists bruised, his back sore from lashes, and his mind spinning with the screams of those taken before him. He wasn't the first human dragged to this cursed world, and if the rumors were true, he wouldn't live long either. The guards didn't speak his language, but he understood their sneers, their expressions of pity mixed with sadistic joy. They all knew what awaited him, trial by service. If he failed to satisfy the Queen, whatever that truly meant, he would be executed like the others. With the royal court watching like it was sport, the chains rattled as two tall Zarnethi guards entered, their blue-gray skin shining with moisture, their curved blades always in sight. They barked a command, and though Jace didn't understand the words, he rose slowly. One misstep, and they would beat him unconscious. The hallway was cold. Alien carvings glowed on the stone walls. He passed other cells filled with beings from different worlds. Some begged, some cried, others just stared in hollow silence. None of them dared to speak to him. They knew where he was going. They knew he wouldn't return. Jace didn't care about the others. Didn't care about the war that led to his capture. He cared about survival. And now, standing at the edge of death, survival was all he had. The doors opened, revealing the Queen's court. Massive pillars twisted like vines. Giant alien insects crawled across the ceiling. Noble Zarnethi sat on floating thrones, their long fingers clutched on gem-covered goblets. But at the center, on a throne made of living bone, sat the Queen. Her skin shimmered with violet and gold, her hair made of tiny scaled tendrils that moved as if alive. Her eyes locked onto him not with anger, not with kindness, but hunger. The kind of hunger that sent chills through his bones. Whispers echoed around the chamber as Jace was brought forward. He was shirtless, his scars on full display. His heart pounded. The Queen did not blink. She leaned forward, her voice slithering through the air like venom. "You are human," she said in near-perfect English. "I have tasted many species, but your kind is still." Knew he didn't know what to say, but he knew silence wouldn't save him. His mouth was dry, but his voice came through. "What do you want from me?" The Queen's smile widened. "Pleasure," she said, and loyalty gasps rippled through the court. Another Zarnethi noble spat in disgust. "Disgusting creatures," he muttered. "They always fail." Jace glanced at the Queen again. Something was wrong. Her eyes didn't just show hunger, they showed something more. Something empty. Something desperate. This wasn't just a trial. This was a trap. Failed, it would be death. But if he succeeded, he'd still be their prisoner. The Queen raised her hand. The guards stepped back. The crowd fell silent. It was time. The chamber doors closed with a hiss. Jace was now alone with the most dangerous creature in the palace. One wrong move, one wrong word, and his head would be on a spike by morning. He took a breath. He had nothing left to lose. And in that moment, the human mind, resilient, stubborn, clever, came alive. He wasn't going to beg. He wasn't going to run. He was going to outsmart them all, because to survive the Queen, he had to become more than just a slave. He had to become unforgettable. The Queen's game against Jace didn't sleep that night. Because sleep was a trap in the Queen's palace, he was given a chamber, unlike the dungeon warm, perfumed and filled with food that looked too beautiful to be real. But he touched nothing. Every bite could be poison. Every soft pillow could hold a hidden blade. Every comfort was a lie. The Queen had not returned after their brief encounter, but her words kept echoing in his head. Pleasure and loyalty. The way she said it slow, deliberate, was not just about desire. She wanted control. She wanted submission. She wanted him to break. At sunrise, the guards returned. This time, they wore ceremonial armor covered in moving patterns. They didn't speak. They only pointed at the door. Jace followed, his jaw clenched. He expected another trial, a test, maybe pain, maybe worse. But instead they led him to a massive arena of white stone. Hundreds of Zarnethi nobles gathered in floating rows. The queen sat atop a crystal throne, looking down like a goddess of judgment. In the center of the arena stood another human, a girl. Her hair was tangled, her face bruised, and her eyes were wild with fear. She looked like someone who had seen everything and survived nothing. Jace was shoved forward. The girl's eyes widened when she saw him. She stumbled backward, shaking her head, then looked toward the queen. "She's broken," one noble said, sipping from a glass. "Unfit for pleasure." The queen raised her hand, and the crowd went silent. "Today," she said, "you will show us something different." Her eyes landed on Jace. "You will tame her, human." A pause followed. Then her voice grew cold. "If you fail, both of you will die," the girl whimpered. Jace didn't move. The guards backed away again. He was alone with the girl. The crowd leaned forward. They didn't want connection. They didn't want peace. They wanted blood. Jace slowly raised his hands. "I'm not here to hurt you," he whispered. The girl flinched. Her name was Lyra. He could see it on a thin metal tag hanging from her neck. It was older than she looked. Her body shook, but she didn't speak. He stepped closer. "I don't know what they've done to you," said, "but I'm not going to play their game." She looked at him, confused. Then she saw the guards still watching, the nobles laughing, the queen smiling from above. It clicked for her too. This was entertainment. He sat down on the arena floor. "If they want a show," he said louder, "let's give them silence." The nobles muttered. The queen narrowed her eyes. Lyra hesitated, then slowly walked over and sat beside him. The arena went dead quiet to humans. Sitting, doing nothing. The queen stood. Her tendrils twitched in anger. But before she could speak, Jace turned his eyes toward her throne. "You wanted loyalty," he said, "but I won't give it for free." The crowd gasped. The guards reached for their weapons. But the queen raised a finger, stopping them. Her voice came through the arena like a razor. "Then what will you give me?" "Slave." Jace stood up. "I'll give you something no other has," he said. "A reason to want me alive for a moment." The queen said nothing. Then, slowly, her lips curled into a curious smile. "Then survive," she whispered, "and show me why." The crowd erupted in noise, confused, angry, entertained. Jace helped Lyra to her feet. The guards returned. They didn't beat him. Didn't drag him. They only stared at him like something had changed. And something had, in a palace of monsters. A human had just refused to play by their rules. Now the queen didn't just want to kill him. She wanted to understand him. Whispers in the dark chambers the next morning. The palace air felt different. As if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Jace woke up in the same perfumed chamber. But something was wrong. The lights were dimmer. The food was untouched. Again. But on the polished table in the center, someone had left a single black flower with blue veins glowing through its petals. He didn't touch it. It wasn't meant to be a gift. It was a message. The queen was watching. Before he could move, a shadow stepped into his chamber. It wasn't a guard. It wasn't a servant. It was a cloaked Zarnethi face, hidden behind a silver mask carved with fangs. "You impressed her," the masked figure said in a low voice. "That is rare, dangerous, and sometimes useful." Jace stayed silent. "I am her whisperer," the figure continued. "I speak the truths that others fear to whisper. And right now, your truth is this: she won't kill you." "Not yet." "Why not?" Jace asked. "Because she's curious. Curiosity in the queen is more dangerous than hatred." Jace narrowed his eyes. "What does she want now?" The whisperer tilted their head. "She wants to break you. Not with blades. With desire. With attention. With power. She will offer you more than comfort. More than survival. She will offer you choice." "I'm still her slave," Jace said. "For now," the whisperer replied. "Ow. But if you make her feel something she hasn't felt in years, it might become more than that." The whisperer vanished as silently. as he came, and then the guards arrived again. But this time, they didn't bring chains. They brought robes. Royal robes. For him, they escorted Jace, not to the court, but to the queen's personal sanctum. The doors opened to reveal a gardeness, a garden hidden inside the heart of the palace. Giant plants with glowing fruits reached toward the glass ceiling. Pools of liquid light reflected floating birds with silver wings. It was beautiful, quiet, strange. And there at the center was the queen. She wore no crown, just a flowing robe that shifted color as she moved. Her tendrils hung loosely, relaxed, but her eyes were sharper than ever. You refused. Me, she said softly. No one refuses me. Jace didn't answer. I want to know why, she said, walking slowly around him. You're a slave. You're nothing. And yet, if you look at me like you're not afraid, I am afraid, he said. But fear doesn't mean surrender. She paused behind him. I could kill you now. Then why haven't you? He replied. She stepped closer. Because I haven't decided what you really are yet. He turned to face her. The garden lights danced across her alien face. She looked ethereal, ancient, and dangerous. But in her eyes, for the first time, he saw something else too. Loneliness. You've executed every other slave that failed, he said. But maybe none of them ever talked to you like a person. I'm not a person, she said coldly. I am queen. Even queens get tired of pretending they don't feel anything. Her expression didn't change, but her voice lost its sharpness. Tell me, human, if I let you live, if I gave you everything you could want in this palace would you choose to stay? Jace stared at her. She was testing him. No, tempting him. She wanted to see if he would bend for comfort, for power, for life. No, he said. The queen smiled, not with joy, but with pure, hungry fascination. Then I will make you want to, she whispered. Jace turned away, but her voice followed. You've started a fire in my court, human, she said. Let's see who burns first. And as the doors closed behind him, Jace knew the game had changed. This wasn't about survival anymore. This was war between two minds, and only one would come out untouched. The queen's secret craving thunder echoed through the crystal domes of Arquara. But it wasn't a storm, it was the sound of rebellion brewing beneath the palace where no royal dared to look. Jace could feel it in the air. The servants moved faster. The guards grew quieter. And when he walked through the halls now, people didn't just stare at him, they whispered. They were afraid, not of him, but of what he meant. The human who hadn't died. The human who said no to the insatiable queen and lived to walk her. Sacred garden. Jace was escorted to a new chamber, not a prison, not a pleasure hall, but a vault inside. He found Lyra, the human girl from the arena, now cleaned and dressed in loose gray silk. Her eyes were clearer, but her hands trembled. She stood beside something massive covered in thick cloth. You came, she whispered. I didn't have a choice, he replied. No, she said, you did. Before he could speak, the queen entered through a hidden door wearing a robe darker than shadow, her golden eyes sharp like daggers. This chamber, she said, has not been opened in a decade. She walked to the cloth and pulled it away. Underneath was a statue of carved, unfinished, and clearly not Zarnethi. It was human. A man. His face was kind, strong, but unfamiliar. This was the first human brought to me, the queen said, voice cold. Before the Empire knew what your kind truly was. Jace stared at the stone eyes. They looked like they could speak, he offered. Me laughter, she said, told stories that made even my generals pause to listen. And then one day he refused me. She stepped closer to the statue, so I ordered him broken, she whispered. But he broke something in me first. Jace looked at her, the truth clicking into place. She lost. Not satisfaction. Not loyalty. But something no one dared name. Connection. Is that why you're keeping me alive? He asked. Because I remind you of him? She turned sharply, anger flashing in her tendrils. You are not him. She snapped. You are. Different. Wilder. Disobedient. And I hate that I cannot control it. Jace didn't step back. Maybe you don't want control, he said. Maybe you want someone who doesn't kneel. The queen laughed. But it wasn't cruel. It was deep. Strange. Almost sad. You think you understand me, she said. But you do not know what it means to carry an empire on your back. To be worshipped, feared, and yet still feel hollow. She stepped forward, close enough that Jace could feel. The heat of her breath. You are not a slave anymore. Human, she whispered. You are now a risk, suddenly. Lyra screamed. Guards rushed in, but not Zarnethi. Rebel guards wearing red insignias, faces hidden, weapons drawn. The queen spun as an energy blast missed her cheek by an inch. Chaos exploded in the chamber. Jace tackled Lyra to the floor as two rebels fired toward the throne wall. The queen moved with unnatural grace, slicing one rebel with a whispered-in blade hidden in her sleeve. But the other shot again this time, hitting a power crystal on the wall. Everything went dark. The vault lights flickered. The rebels were gone. Only smoke and silence remained. Lyra was shaking in his arms, and the queen was wounded. Her side bled black onto the marble floor. Guards stormed in a moment later. But before they reached her, the queen raised a hand and pointed at Jace. He saved me, she said through gritted teeth. Take him to my personal chamber. No cells. The guards hesitated, confused. Now, she barked. Jace didn't protest. He didn't trust her. But he knew one thing. He had just crossed into something dangerous. He was no longer a slave in the queen's eyes. He was something worse. An unknown variable in a palace full of lies. The memory she buried just stood beside the queen's private healing tank. Watching as golden liquid wrapped around her wounded form like liquid glass, she had been silent for hours, floating in that strange cocoon while alien machines whispered and worked. Her skin glowed faintly, her tendrils pulsed with light, but her eyes remained closed. Lyra had been taken elsewhere. Jace wasn't told where, and that made his chest burn more than he expected. Guards watched him from every corner. Did none dared approach. Not after the queen's direct command. Not after he had shielded her during the rebel attack. She should have died. Someone whispered behind the walls, but the human saved her. Why? To earn favor? Or to manipulate her? He said nothing. Because he didn't have the answer himself. Then the queen's eyes snapped open. The liquid drained. She stepped out, silent, untouched by modesty or fear. The room froze. Ash. Jace met her. Gaze and saw something terrifying. Not power, clarity. I owe you my life, she said. No, Jace replied. You owe me the truth. She narrowed her eyes, but didn't speak. Instead, she turned and gestured for him to follow. No guards came. Just her, just him. Down a spiral path that twisted into the deep bones of the palace. They passed no guards, no servants.
Out.
Only shadows. And carvings on the walls. Old carvings, older than the Empire. Some even looked human. What is this place? Jace asked. This, the queen said. Is the part of my world the others pretend doesn't exist? They entered a circular chamber. Single holographic pillar glowed in the center. The queen placed her hand on it. The air shimmered. And then a projection filled the room. A starship, burning through atmosphere. A woman's voice, crying in pain. A child, alien and human at once. Being pulled from an escape pod, Jace's breath caught in his throat. That's Earth tech. He whispered. The queen didn't turn to him. My mother, she said, was human. The images kept playing an injured human woman dying in an alien forest. Zarnethi scavengers watching her final breath. They didn't kill her. They took her child. You were born from a human, Jace said slowly. Yes, she replied. Ass. A symbol. A symbol. A bridge between conquerors and prey. He understood now. Her craving wasn't just desire. It was identity. She was neither fully Zarnethi nor human. She was both, and neither. And the court feared her because they knew if the galaxy discovered the truth, the Zarnethi throne would crack. You see why I test your kind, she said. I am searching for answers. For pieces of myself, by enslaving them, Jace said bitterly. She turned to him, her voice calm but sharp. Do you think I'm proud of it? She said, do you think I sleep peacefully under this crown? Yeah. He didn't answer. I am not what they believe I am, she whispered, but I must become what they fear. Or they will destroy me. Jace stepped closer. Then why show me this? She looked at him for a long moment, voice quieter than ever. Because you were the first one I thought might understand. The room fell silent again. Mind, a war had begun. If he stayed silent, he could rise. If he told the galaxy he could bring her empire to its knees, but either path carried blood, and now. He wasn't just part of the game. He was the only one who knew the Queen's greatest secret. And the decision to keep or destroy her was now his to make. The crown beneath the blade, the silence didn't last long. The moment Jace emerged from the hidden chamber, the palace was in chaos. Flames danced on the far towers. The air buzzed with alarm signals. And in the distance, explosions shook the marble walls like thunder from an angry god. The rebellion had begun. Zarnethi, rebels masked, well-armed and merciless, had breached the outer rings. Slaves were being freed. Servants had fled. The Queen's elite guard fought back, but the resistance was coordinated, brutal, and faster than anyone expected. Jace was dragged from the hall by two of the Queen's soldiers. But this time, they didn't push or curse him. They looked terrified. She wants you alive, one said. She said you must reach the throne room. And if I don't? Jace asked. She said the palace will fall without you. That didn't make sense. He wasn't a soldier, or a king, or even a leader. He was just a slave with a voice and a secret. And yet now, everything seemed to depend on him as he was pulled through the burning halls. He caught sight of Lyra again fighting beside a rebel, blood on her arms, a dagger in her hand. Their eyes met just for a second. Then she turned away. She thought he had chosen the Queen. He didn't blame her. The throne room doors burst open, revealing a scene straight out of Madness. The Queen stood alone, surrounded by bodies, both her loyalists and invaders. Her robes were torn. Her crown lay shattered on the steps. She held a weapon unlike any he'd seen, a living blade, wrapped in lightning. Close the doors, she said without looking back. The guards obeyed. They sealed him in. You said this rebellion would happen, Jace said. I didn't expect. It's so soon, she replied. But now the time for games is over. She turned to him slowly, her golden eyes glowing. I gave you my secret, she said. Now I ask you this. Will you help me save what remains? Why should I, Jace asked. You've built a kingdom on fear. You destroyed people like me. Because if I fall, she said, they will erase every human from this world. He stepped closer, through the smoke and the blood. If you live, he said, you'll keep ruling through chains. Her voice cracked for the first time. Not if you stand beside me. Jace stared at her. Not as a queen, not as a monster, but as something else. A survivor. A creature born from two worlds, hated by both, carrying a throne that burned her from the inside. And then he did something that stunned the remaining guards. He picked up the broken crown. I'm not kneeling, he said, but I'll stand with you until the last breath. She didn't speak. She only nodded once. That was all. The walls shook again. Outside, the rebels prepared their final charge. Inside, a human slave and a half-human queen prepared to fight side by side, not for power, not for empire, but for the right to change everything. And in that moment, Jace realized something terrifying and true. He had become what none of them expected. Not a servant, not a pawn, but the final decision between survival and collapse. A throne rebuilt in ash. The throne room shook with the roar of plasma cannons. The final wave had arrived. Outside the shattered glass dome, rebel gunships circled like vultures. Inside, smoke choked the air, and the bodies of royal elites and rebel commanders lay twisted beneath broken pillars. But Jace stood, not with a weapon, not with armor, but with the Queen, her arm bloodied, her breath shallow, her once glowing tendrils now dull and limp. I can't hold him much longer, she whispered, barely standing. They will tear this place apart. Jace turned to the sealed door. He could hear it buckling, sparks flying from its frame. The rebels weren't here to take prisoners. They were here to end a dynasty. No peace. No second chances. Just execution. And somewhere in that army was Lyra. He stepped over the fallen, found the control panel buried beneath a collapsed arch, and activated the external speaker. "I'm Jace," his voice echoed across the palace. "The human you thought was just another slave." The firing paused outside. "I was a prisoner," he continued, "but now I know more than you do. I've seen what's beneath this throne. The truth. Her truth. Our truth." A long silence followed. Then a voice crackled back, Lyra's voice. "She used us," she said. "She enslaved us." "She'll do it again, no?" Jace said. "Because now she doesn't rule alone." He stepped back from the speaker and turned to the queen. "Tell them," he said. "Tell them what you really are." The queen coughed. Her pride trembled. But then she rose. "I was born of two bloods," she said, her voice raw and unfiltered through the cums, Zarnethi and human. A long silence fell again. "I hid it," she said, "because I feared what it meant. Because my court made me a weapon. But now I will not hide." Another pause. Then the gunships pulled back slightly. A few rebels lowered their weapons. Confusion had spread like wildfire. Then Lyra's voice returned. "And what of justice?" she asked. "For those who died under your command." Jace looked at the queen. She gave him a weak nod. "Then let justice begin now," Jace said. "Not." With more blood but with a new throne, he dropped the broken crown onto the palace floor. Then he took a step back. "I am not your king," he said. "I am not your enemy. We become the same Mounacers and we become the same monsters. We once feared." The doors finally opened. Lyra stood in the front, blade lowered, her expression unreadable. She stepped forward. The queen didn't move. Then Lyra dropped her weapon. "This changes nothing," she said softly, "but it has to start somewhere." The others followed. Slowly, carefully. No shots fired that day. No one claimed victory. The queen survived. But she never wore a crown again. Jace lived, but never left the palace walls. The rebels stayed. Not as enemies, but as watchers, as builders, as voices of those who had been silenced. And Lyra, the girl, who once trembled in chains, became something greater. The bridge between the fire and the rain. Jace often stood alone in the garden, where strange birds flew above alien trees. The queen would sometimes join him, but they rarely spoke. Because some bonds weren't made with words, they were forged in pain, tested by fire, and sealed with the choice not to destroy but to change. And in the ruins of an empire built on obedience, a new kind of rule began, one not of power, but of understanding.